What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Forever Human Podcast. My name is Slims, and today's episode is going to be about the military, especially my time in the military. Now, the format's going to be a little bit different. So before my previous videos, I was talking to a camera, which is different, pretty much for everybody. But for me, as far as helping people and talking to people, I do really well talking to a person. It just allows me to get more of my thoughts across, or different quotes or whatever I have in my mind, versus trying to follow a script or look at notes. It just doesn't, I feel like it's not the same. But when I look at these videos, it honestly doesn't feel a lot like me. Like those who know me, when we conversate, it's definitely a more engaging type of conversation. So I gave my producer Jay some questions, and he knows the topic that we're talking about with the military. He's a veteran also. So I think this would be a good conversation. And I'm just going to have him kind of just ask me these questions and kind of go through it. So, all right, Jay, let me see what you got.
All right, man. So when you look back at your 12 years in the military, what did the military actually give you?
Ooh, that's a good question. The biggest thing I think I would say is perspective, right? Like being in the military, they start off realistically. And the one thing I like about the military is that it kind of shows you, or where they started off is, they strip you down, right? From the human concept. They strip you down to a basic level. And at the end of the day, especially in basic training, you are pretty much a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine at the end of the day. And I think that's great because it's one of those things, especially being involved, it kind of puts you in a melting pot of a lot of people. And being in that melting pot of people, it allows you to see different perspectives from people all over the world. You'll deal with people that you've never even seen before. When I was in basic training, I actually ran into a guy who had never seen a black person before in his life. Me and my buddy were the very first two. He came from Minnesota. He never seen him before, which turned into something else because he ended up swearing off his parents and stuff because they were really racist. But he only knew, what he had been kind of grown up in. And so it was very eye-opening for me because I'm meeting him. There was a guy from Scotland with the accent and everything in my flight. So I think it gave me a lot of perspective and showed me that, even though people are from all over the place, right, at a human being level, we're all pretty much the same. We all wanted to survive the trash of basic together. We all wanted to just make it out of there alive. And when you put a group of people in that kind of situation, very clearly do you realize all of that extra stuff where you come from, religion, a lot of that stuff tends to tear apart because you just worry about focusing on the team. And so I would say one thing out of those 12 years, it kind of helped me see that, helped me kind of understand that process, coming from just knowing my family, my group of people, my friends, my family from California, and then my dad's family from down south. So their perspectives is all I really know. Now I'm meeting people from New York, Boston, all these other places. And it really helped me just kind of get that better open mind, if that makes sense.
It does. When you were going through the list of branches, I didn't hear you say Space Force, by the way.
You're right, Space Force. They're another new one. They're new what it is, so Space Force, got to put them in there too.
What are Space Force people called?
Space Force. I don't even know. That happened after I separated. So I think Space Cadets?
Space Cadets.
We'll call them Space Cadets for now. We'll just let that ride. And somebody in the comments can can go ahead and correct me.
That sounds good. Okay, so how different do you think you would be if you had never joined the military?
Man, that's a good question. I'd be completely different, vastly different. I think, when I was coming up, I'm very much somebody who can adapt to a lot of situations. I was involved in every group. I played basketball, obviously being tall, but I was with the sports guys. I was with the band guys. I'm a gamer and a nerd, so I was with the nerd kids. I was with every group. And so that being a good thing, because I can adapt, it makes it very difficult to kind of find your own space. And I think going into the military kind of forced me to find that space. And so me not doing that, I could have definitely ended up in a bad crowd, right? Because we can make ourselves believe that any kind of situation is okay, or it's not that big a deal. But I could definitely see myself going down a terrible path, especially as far as me, I was drinking a lot more when I was younger back then and everything else. So I don't see a lot of that shifted because I was never in a point. As far as when I joined the military, my dad made it very simple. Once you raise your right hand, as far as I was concerned, that was it. Either you do what they say or you go into jail. Pick one. And so with that kind of mindset, it really had me focus on, okay, I need to play the game that I'm playing in the military, do what I got to do so I can continue to get this paycheck and continue to do all those things. At the same time, I feel like there is a lot of information though that I maybe would have gotten earlier or learned earlier, because the military does do a lot of things for you, right? As soon as you join, you go to your first base, you're in the dorms, and then you have the dining facility right there. They tell you, hey, make sure you go to your medical appointments. And there's a lot of shuffling you exactly where you need to go versus you having to figure it out for yourself. And so I think if I had been a civilian, I would have definitely had to learn all those things immediately up front, right, without that hand holding. And then I think that would have, at least for me, a type of person that I am, I definitely could have learned a lot more about, taxes and more about medical insurance, more about all those different things that are kind of just given to me in the military. I don't really have to think about, now that I'm out, having to go to my medical appointments and set those up, understanding the different insurances with different companies, all that I didn't have to really know about. You just go to the dining facility. It's easy. And so as a civilian, I think I definitely could have learned more from that on that side of it, for sure.
So those were things that you could have learned. What's something, I guess, that by you joining, you did learn, and you're like, I'm glad I joined because I got that and I needed that?
Leadership. I would say leadership would be the best thing. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a civilian. He's never been in the military before. And one of the things that I realized, I'm sure you've seen it too, like I was a knowledge ops guy. So I worked in admin and I worked a lot of front office positions. Also did a lot of like the portal and online stuff and IT stuff. And in the military, we always deal with new commanders, right? Every 4 years is a new commander. Every little bit, there's a lot of in and out, which means you're dealing with a lot of different leadership styles. You're dealing with a lot of different people who have a certain mindset on how something should be ran. And I think in the civilian world, they don't get to see that because you might have the same boss for 20 years. And that's the first job you got to, because they don't have to rotate and move. Their retirement is way different. And so being in, especially now that I'm noticing out, it's just that leadership aspect, learning how to, going through ALS, right, the Airman Leadership School, to have those difficult conversations, to teach you how to talk to other people and teach you how to talk, whether they're your subordinate or whether they're somebody who's working right, same level as you. It really taught me a lot more about that. And then in general, I think dealing with people, and I think that just came with, again, having to deal with all of these different rotations of different type of leadership styles of how people think. And then really not having a say in it because, they got more stripes than me. I got to do the job. You really can't complain too much. You can only do so much at the end of the day. Sergeant says you do this, you're the airman, you just kind of got to get it done. And so I think it helped with that part. And on that note, I would say, dealing with stuff that I don't like that I have to do, right? Like I was deployed and I've literally had to rake sand for the simple purpose of them knowing they didn't want us to rake sand. That was the whole reason. And there's no benefit from it, no bonus from it. You can say, oh, well, it's hazing or whatever. In my mind, it was really like you're in a situation where you need to execute. Now, the military is a little bit more drastic because in their mind, they're thinking, hey, if you're on a corner and I need you to take that corner, we don't need to have a conversation. I need you to execute. But I kind of think about that in the same mindset of completing any kind of task or doing anything. You might get set in a situation where this really sucks. I got to go through this whole spreadsheet. I don't feel like doing this. I have a lot less resistance to that now. Like I know it sucks. I see that it sucks. Too damn bad. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to be mad while I'm doing it, but it's going to get done. And then it's over with. And then I ain't got to worry about it no more.
Embrace the suck. Right?
Embrace the suck. That's literally what it is. And so it's really, I've noticed when I first got out and had my first contract, civilians have a difficult time with that. If there's anything that they want to challenge. And it's not necessarily a problem of asking questions. I don't think that's an issue. There's a difference between trying to just be straight resistance versus asking a question to make sure whatever you're about to do is going to be better. And I think some of them if it just sounds like something they don't want to do, they're just trying to find a reason not to do it versus what's the best way I can just get this done. And then I don't have to worry about it anymore. And so that's definitely something that I took out from the military that I definitely see helps me a lot more in the civilian world and helps me a lot. I won't say get further than people, but I would say just, like I said, have less resistance, able to get other things done. That would take somebody else a lot more time.
Yeah, you mentioned those interactions with civilians.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of service members, they struggle when they get out kind of dealing with civilians. Is that a struggle for you? Because it's so different, y'all come from different worlds.
Right.
Is that a struggle for you? Did you have a point where it was like really rough?
Yeah, I had a point where my first job, I worked at a major bank as a contractor, as a software engineer. And it was hybrid, so it was on-site, part at home. That was right when COVID hit. And so I used to go in the office, and it was weird to me at first because I've heard about the rat race. You hear it all the time and everything else. And they always talk about us, the military is the 1% of people who join the military. But when you're in the military and you go to these different bases, you're around all these military bases, you're around all these military people. So that 1% number doesn't really seem as small as it is until you actually separate. And when I first separated, I was still married at the time, and my ex-wife was active duty. So I was still on base. So it didn't really hit me the same way because I was still on base, still had to go through the gate. I can go to my old job. I worked off base, but it didn't really hit me the same. And then after we moved and I was really more in a civilian environment, going to work, like I said, I was going to this bank I was working at, and it was just, everybody felt like robots. Like everybody felt like there was a guy, I seen him every day, this man, I would go to, I'm a man of routine because of the military. So they had a nice little salad bar area. I'd go get my salad for lunch and go back to the office. That's just how I did my job. There was a guy I would see every day. This is for months, literally every day. He would have the same lunchbox. He would go sit in the same seat and he would open it up. He'd have his same sandwich and he would sit there and eat. He wouldn't be on his phone. He wouldn't be doing nothing. He would just sit there and eat his sandwich. And it was scary at first when I started to notice that pattern. And I was like looking around, and a lot of people called me, Mr. Morale. Hey, what's going on, Drake? We talk because everybody would be kind of like just huddled in their things. And it showed me that, okay, the thing for me, as far as being in the military, we're really big on, morale. Trying to make sure everybody's got a good morale sense. So the inside, they're just kind of worried about work. And so for me, trying to come in and do that, I could tell a lot of people didn't like that. Like, why are you coming in here being so loud? Why are you talking? Just sit down and go to work. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to make it a better, but let me just pause. And that's what I noticed. Anytime I go to a different environment, especially being a contractor, noticing how to just pause and just sit back and just wait. Being a military person, I've realized I just have more innate patience than a lot of people because of the stuff that we've seen or been through. And I think the difficult part was trying to learn how they move to do things, because they just do things very differently. They take a lot of time to do things where I can look at a problem and say, well, we could do it this way, especially since there's no first sergeant type of thing that lives in the civilian world. The people get away with doing a lot of things that they really shouldn't be doing. And so you try to explain or try to help something, but if they're not idea, you can just tell they got that kind of animosity towards you or whatever. They just won't do it, and you'll end up doing something the long way just because. And to deal with that for somebody for a long time, it's just difficult. But it's just learning how they do things, learning how they continuity books is a big thing that I noticed, right? As soon as I joined the military, that was the first thing I had to do. Hey, welcome to the office. Check out our continuity book. This is how you learn in case somebody dies next week, you know how to do their job. They had none of that. They had no idea. They had a lady who got removed. She left. They were doing like where they let people go and they'll give you a service package or whatever. They told her legitimately not to tell nobody that she was leaving. And she did the time cards. And so she left. The next day I come into work and everybody's like, where's so-and-so? Oh, she's gone. Well, who's going to do the time cards? They don't know. So why would you let that person go? Like, what are we doing? And so it's just, and it's not even the fact of, it's part of it, the reason what's happening, right? Why are we letting people go without telling nobody? When we PCS 6 months beforehand, everybody know, hey, he ain't going to be here in 30 days, brother. He said, hey, 2 weeks, he ain't going to be here. So we know. Civilians, they just don't do that. And the scary part was that everybody was just like, okay. And I'm like, no, this is not good. We need to have something in place because now something's going to blow up. And then we're going to be like, well, why did it blow up? Why the hell didn't you tell nobody? And so it was just, I think the best way to explain it, honestly, it's like after leaving the military, I did 12 years separated as a staff sergeant, so E5. You go into a lot of these large companies and you would assume they're being ran by a whole bunch of like E1s. Like you're like, how did y'all get this far? This doesn't make you don't have any kind of continuity. You have no type of power. Like, how are y'all doing? And it's just, you see, it doesn't take a lot. One thing I realized is that companies that make a lot of money or people take a lot of money, they get this, they're doing a good job just because they've made a lot of money. And just it doesn't matter how much money a company is making, like what's happening indoors. And I can see a lot of the stuff that's happening was just jacked up. So that was one of the hard things. And I always have to tell myself, this ain't the military no more. Like as much as I know some of my processes can fix or help, I need to help them the way that they need help, not the way that my brain thinks, well, we need to do this because in the military I used to do this. No, it's just taking that piece from the military. Okay, we need to build these things out. Let me sit down and talk to them and kind of guide them in that way to get to where they need to go, if that makes sense. So long way to say, it's just the legit mindset of how they work in a business aspect or just how they complete operations as a whole. That was the hardest thing. And being able to be quiet, let them do it the wrong way and get the whole picture. So that way you can just help them. Because at the end of the day, they just need help with it, right? They're not wrong. It's just they don't know what they don't know. So that's kind of how
Not wrong, just different.
There we go. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the military like as a whole.
Right.
And I don't know if you mentioned this specifically, and I apologize if you did, but you were in the Air Force.
Right.
So what specifically about the Air Force prepared you for what you're doing now?
So I'm probably gonna get a lot of heat for this, what I'm about to say. But in my honest, I feel like it's the truth. So my father was in the Marine Corps, my grandfather was in the Navy, my sister was in the Air Force, and my brother was in the Army. So I had all of them. My dad told me long ago, E1 through E9 get paid the exact same in every branch. The pay chart is out there, so choose wisely. And so I chose the Air Force. I was a computer guy, wanted to be a computer guy. And after getting out, what I realized is that the Air Force really is built to train people for that corporate environment versus these other branches. I tell people if they want to join, that's fine. Like everybody joins for their own specific reason. You don't have to join because you bleed red and blue. You don't have to join because you have your reason for why you join. You do your work, you do your time, and you get out. And so the Air Force specifically really did help me as far as emails, and it sounds small, signature blocks, but how to talk on an email, how to type up an email, how to deal with different types of meetings, staff meetings. All those things do exist in the civilian world. And then also just that people aspect. That's military as a whole, but definitely in the Air Force, the way we do different projects, project management, a lot of that stuff does translate to the outside. And so I would definitely say that definitely helped a lot. Had I been in the Marine Corps or the Army, it definitely, I feel like would have been more military where they have their purse stats, their roll calls in the morning. It's very more a stricter, I feel like, military atmosphere versus the Air Force is very much, being at the Pentagon and going to working, especially working in front offices, having to wear blues every day. That's what it is. You're wearing your suit to work every day. You're going to the thing. You have your meetings in the morning. We didn't really have to check in to see where everybody was. Everybody had to be working 9. So working 9. And so that's one thing I think it prepped me a lot for. The Air Force definitely helped me set up to where going from that to working in any kind of business, especially like in the admin corporate world, it's you're going to have a lot more bonuses than a lot of the people, I would feel like. A lot more leg ups, if you will.
Would you agree with this? I don't know for sure, so put it in the comments if I'm right or wrong. But in the Air Force, we do a lot of like sock rolling and tucking corners and stuff. Like we spend all day doing stuff like that.
Do my basic training stuff. Yeah.
Basic training stuff. I feel like in other branches, they might be doing more running and push-ups and stuff, but the Air Force seems to be very detail oriented.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? And you feel like that also helps?
Yeah. It's attention to detail. That's the number one phrase that you hear a lot of times, attention to detail. Pay attention to what you're doing. And so I think that's a huge piece because speaking about hospital, I got in trouble for that all the time because it just wasn't perfect. It just wasn't, right. There can be caveats to that because it can kind of give you a little bit of trying to give a bit of perfectionism habit, which you don't want to pull into, but it definitely has you make sure you review everything. Hey, let me make sure this is done. Let me make sure this is done. I'm going to review it again just in case because I don't want to hear first sergeants in my face. Like I'm going to go through it. So they do a lot of that. And I think that helps a lot because, civilians are really good at just, we got this, just send it off, being able to say, hey, I have my steps, my checklist, if you will, of how I go through and make sure things look good. Yeah, that's definitely a good skill to help me out in the future.
Definitely. So looking back now, is there anything you would have done differently during your 12 years of service?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I would have tried to go out for more opportunities. My mindset when I came in, was a lot of first and the 15th, paycheck to paycheck. I didn't really use a lot of opportunities that we have. No, they give you a lot of I tell people, it's not that the military makes a lot of money, it's that we have the opportunity to save a lot of money. You don't have to spend on a lot of stuff, especially when you first join. They're paying for your food, they're paying for your living. You're just getting your paycheck, which is good. And so I think using like the financial advisors that were at, the FSS for free, you just had to make an appointment and they will help you break down everything you need to do. Going out in town and using more of the, different opportunities that they have for different like sporting events and stuff. I just never really jumped on board to a lot of those things to get more, exposure out there to different people, which means different leaders that I could have ran into. And just different opportunities that I kind of just let go. Now, I deployed a lot in the military, so that's where I think most of my energy really went. But over those 12 years, and some of those were volunteers, but over those 12 years, I think I definitely would have tried to capitalize on more of my opportunities. I went to school, but I did it later on. Like I could have came in, got in, did my not CCAF. Well, you get the CCAF, but did my, my training in CDCs and then gone through and just started knocking those things out while still having fun. Like I had this idea that either you were a guy that went to school or you were one of the guys that had a good time, playing beer pong or whatever else. But you could do both. You can do both. And I think that's one thing that I could solidify an hour, maybe 2 hours to work on something for school. And then I've got the next 6 hours to do whatever I want to do to have fun. So I definitely would have used a lot more of those. I'm using them now. I'm using all the things that I can now, obviously. But if I had done those earlier, I could be going for my master's a lot sooner. There are a lot of more opportunities I could have had sooner. Not saying I regret any of it, but just looking back, I definitely would have probably changed that.
For sure. If someone was thinking about joining the military today, what would you want them to understand that a recruiter probably isn't going to tell them? But can you also break that down for the young buck that's thinking about joining? Right. And the old head that's thinking about joining? Because, they raised the
They did raise
so
the
there's
limit,
some people that are our age that are thinking about joining. So can you break it down for both?
So as far as the military as a whole, like my dad said in the first place, E1 through E9 get paid across the board, right? Very first thing is, what are you really joining for? And be honest with yourself about what you're joining for. When I was deployed in Qatar, we had a guy, he was older than me. He was a senior airman, but his daughter was really sick. And so they had some medical stuff. And that's why he joined. He needed to get some medical stuff for her. Great airman, probably one of my better ones because everybody else was like 19, 21. He was like 30 something. But I think that's the first thing. Understanding exactly what it is you are trying to join for. And then something that a recruiter probably won't tell you. Probably won't tell you a lot, but I would say more as you're going through it, as you're dealing with all of the stuff that's not going to make sense, that I feel like are put in place to try to make you angry or piss you off on purpose. Try to learn to listen to understand versus listen to try to just get an answer. Just try to listen to the surroundings of what you got going on. There's a lot of good leaders that are in the military that you can learn from. And then also, especially for the young ones coming in, when you deal with, because a lot of them get, not so great supervisors. But what they got to remember is a lot of them are first-time supervisors too. Everybody was somebody's guinea pig at some point in time. That you just go ahead and deal with it. You're going to be somebody's guinea pig. Doesn't mean it's going to be a bad experience. Could be, a great experience. But it also means it could be a bad experience. And they just don't know what they don't know. And so I would definitely say for a young person going in, you got to work on your patience. And on top of that, you got to learn to communicate. I think that's one of the big issues now is that people, they can text on the phone. I can send you a Teams message about how I feel, but I can't sit down and have that conversation. You need to learn how to sit down and have that same conversation that you can type on a Teams message or send in a text message. And doing that, number one, we would like to think that the supervisor at that time would be able to respect you more and you can have that conversation to figure things out. But the more that you just hold things in your head and you just communicate with all the other E1 and E2s, you go end up just in a echo chamber of everything's terrible, everything's bad, because all y'all don't know what all y'all don't know, versus actually getting information from somebody who has a little bit more experience and can give you, and I'm not saying take everything they say as law either, take it with a grain of salt, but somebody can give you some more information. Don't be afraid to ask questions, right? And for old and new, don't be afraid to use your first sergeant. This is kind of I think that's, every branch has their, Army calls it top. Everybody's got their own version of it, but don't be afraid to use those resources because they can alleviate a lot. I'm noticing now what that doesn't do for companies on the outside. And for me, if I ever get a corporation, that's the first thing I'm going to institutionalize is that kind of first sergeant role mentality, that one pipeline to the main boss that everybody can go to without feeling any kind of repercussions. But yeah, learning to listen, to understand, and then trying to think what else that a recruiter wouldn't tell you.
Recruiter wouldn't tell you to embrace the suck. That's for sure.
That's yeah. Embrace the suck. Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by just listening. Patience is going to be key. Learning to listen, to understand what people are saying around you is going to be key. Attention to detail is definitely going to be key. But at the end of the day, for old and new, and I still think it's the same, even though it's changed. It's a game. It's just a big game that you're going to have to play. You're going to deal with people that you don't like. You're going to deal with people that you love. Both of these things are inevitable. You're going to have to do some work that you hate doing. You're going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning for something stupid. There's going to be a exercise on base. And now for the next week, y'all got to be here at 6 and Blues. Like, learn to give yourself patience. And also in opportunities like that, learn to figure out a way to give yourself something back. I got to do this car wash that I don't feel like having to do on Saturday. So since I got to do this car wash, I'm going to make sure I talk to everybody. Like, I'm going to get something back for myself after whatever it is I got to do that I don't want to have to do, if that makes sense. Those are definitely some things. But yeah, embracing the suck, they're not going to tell you, but you've got no choice but to do that, or you're going to end up leaving. You ain't got no choice but to do that. But yeah, definitely, like I said, make sure you understand why you're joining, because that's going to be picking the branch is going to be, you can always change branches. You can go blue to green and stuff. But I think picking the branch, understanding why you joined is going to be the biggest key. Hey, I'm joining because I seen a guy do that. It's the only time I've seen it. He joined for 4 years. He wanted to get his degree and get out. That's literally what he did. He got in, he was in comm, senior airman, got his master's degree, did his 4 years, and he left. It was straight open and shut case. And I was like, man, that's the first time I've ever really seen that. Usually they come in, they get you for another reenlistment because you get your BOP, and then no, understand why you're joining. And if you're joining because you're just trying to make some money, because it's rough times, you want to get a permanent job, that's fine. Just find your avenue in there. Find somebody, find a good leader to pair up with, find somebody to help guide you, especially somebody who's older, because you're already going to get looked at, because especially being in the dorms. I had an airman like that. She was almost 40 and they had her in the dorms on base. And I'm like, hey, you going to be the king over there now. You got to know how to run it. Help them to get to where they need to go. You know what I mean? Use the environment that you have to work for you. And that's the best thing that you can do. And that's exactly what she did. And I'm happy for her for that. So, yeah, I think those are the main things I can think of right now.
That's it, man. That's all the questions I got for you, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, man. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Any comments, please. I know people probably gonna cuss me out in the comment section about military stuff. That's fine. That's what we're here for. But other than that, hasta luego.